Okay. Awesome. All right, guys. So I'm super pumped to be here. I'm kind of nervous. I'll get through it. But I will give you a fair warning. Ethics is something that you really have to like dig into. So as you guys are going through your studying, like don't expect that like random little pop-up studies is going to solve it all. You have to get into that clinical mentality, right? This is where you are learning to think like a BCBA because that's what the entire exam is about. It's not so much can you figure out which one is best, is do you have the train of thought to help your clients. Now, I'm going to go through like very brief history of the reasoning why the ethics code came to be. And this is just because I think it's important to understand the reasoning behind the ethics code. This is not just something that's annoying and we have to go through. This is something that when I started studying, I realized that there was like no resources. I was like, I don't know where I'm going to learn from this. So I created a dedicated study group that all we did was go through an ethics code every single week until we tested. And then we started practicing and like really saying like, okay, for this month, I'm going to be focusing on making sure that I have my treatment signatures, right? And making sure that I do have informed consent or that signed consent from parents. Or maybe this time I'm going to go in and make sure that all my visual graphs are adequate and that they are able to communicate the data to everybody. So taking it and really applying it as a way to become a better clinician. So the ethics code, or like the origin story, right? So we began in the behaviorist, or one of the four branches, in EAB, right? We were straight up in the lab working with animals, like, hey, what happens if I shock you? What happens if I give you more food, right? And we were testing those basic principles: punishment, extinction, and reinforcement. Now, when we saw that we were onto something and we're like, yeah, this totally works and we can work on behavior, we went crazy and we just like threw it out there for everybody to be subjected to. And we didn't take into consideration that animals and humans have like completely different ethical codes, right? And we have values and we have things that like give us guilt and shame and all these like really complex emotions. So when we go into this transition with working with humans, we went into what was originally called behavior modification. That's like where the beginning of our field came from. And we didn't get a good rep. Like honestly, we it's in the ethics book, but we would utilize like public masturbation as a punishment procedure. We would utilize like over correction that is, it's just, it was a hot mess. Okay, read it. It's really not a bad read, and it really shows you why it's important. So we came from, hey, we're kind of shady and we like mistreat people, and in order to really like avenge our name or really do right by it, we created this super strict ethics code. And this came from the Sunland Training Center in Miami. So it was in 1972. It was a big case. If you haven't read about it, like really, it's a short read, guys. Please get out there into the ethics book. But in theory, it showed the like really mistreatment of humans. And it showed how unethical and how cruel we were being to individuals that have, yes, special needs. However, they have emotions and they have this need for autonomy and to have that independence. So after that, that was like our big like wake up moment. So we started going into like the Blue Ribbon Committee and really trying to like check ourselves. And it's just creating, and this is where I think honestly that imposter syndrome comes from, because we are literally trained to question ourselves. Like, be effective. Are you effective? Is this data still effective? You know, you're going into, I'm questioning every single thing that I'm doing, which is great because it keeps us like up to date and making the most effective interventions for our clients. But it makes us doubt ourselves, right? Like, I just implemented a treatment plan or like a new goal 2 weeks ago. Is this still working? Is this work all the however many hours you spend on it? I don't know. So that's where ethics came from, right? That comes from like, hey, we weren't really nice people, but we are a great profession and we have the ability to like literally change people's lives. I can teach somebody to communicate with their mom. I have heard clients speak for their first time ever, right? Like that's amazing and it's life-changing and all these behavioral cusps. But in order to do so, we have to abide by certain rules. So everybody talks about how Cooper is like the Bible for behavior analysts. Well, the ethics are like the 10 commandments, right? These are the things that you have to implement and the rules that you include in your interventions to make sure that you're doing just the good thing, right? Like you're just plain fair. You're wanting to contribute in a positive way to your client's life, trainees, and it goes into all the people that are involved. Now, there are 9 like principles, I believe they were called, right, Patrick? Like the guiding principles. Okay. So these are like the guiding principles, and it's just, again, what we have to do, right? Like do no harm, respect the autonomy of our clients, benefit others, make sure that we are including them in the intervention process. We're just, we're faithful, we're acting with dignity. And it just goes into like the creation of our superhero attitude, right? I think behavior analysts are amazing. We have the ability to, again, change lives, but this is what we have to do in order to keep those powers under control, because with great power comes great responsibility, right? Okay, so when we go down the code, I'm really gonna go really heavy into codes 1, 2, and 5. All the other codes are, yes, obviously important. I'm not saying don't read them, but all the other codes are more like rules that we have to follow and just like check off. But 1, 2, and 5 really speak to like how you act as a clinician. Okay, so if during codes 1, 2, or 5, I get really preachy or start crying, somebody stop me so I can compose myself, okay? All right, so let's go into code 1, which is the first code that we now utilize for ourselves. So you have to keep in mind, right? You have worked your butt off to get this certification. You have studied endless hours, right? Like you have maybe tested multiple times, you have missed out on birthdays, yada, 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 right? We know the sacrifice. Now we have to utilize this code as a way to also protect our certification. So the first code speaks to the conduct of a responsible behavior analyst. So first I'm going to start with myself, right? And I gave a quick breakdown. I am going to be able to share this presentation with Patrick. So if you want to forward it along, that would be cool. But it's just the code 1 really talks about like how we act and how we really just keep ourselves accountable. So 1.01, we only use evidence-based treatment, right? Easy. If it's not evidence-based, if you cannot give me documentation or articles that are peer-reviewed and published, then I can't do anything with it. Why? Because I'm a responsible behavior analyst. Then we go into 1.2, which ties right into it, right? Not only do I want things that are scientifically based, but I also want to be trained in it and have it be within my boundary of competence. If you do not have that competence, right, which goes right into 1.3, you have to continue to grow. You have to either search for supervision so you can learn a new competency or a new intervention, or maybe working with a new population. You have to go to workshops. That's where the CEUs come in, right? That's where we're going into like, you disseminate. This is your responsibility. Now you are like a baby BCBA. Now it's your time to grow and actually find the way to really make it specific to where you are implementing your treatment. For instance, yes, once I passed the exam, I then was able to focus on like, okay, how can I make cultural adaptations with my population? I work with families that are like, I want to say 80% Spanish speaking, right? And we were trying to teach them in English. So now that I have the certification, now I have the ability to grow and look at CEUs and really find a way to help the population that I work with directly. Then we go into 1.4, which is being somebody of integrity. Now, integrity, and I really love 1.04. It's probably one of my top 5 codes out there, because this one, it just talks about like how you have to respect yourself as a, hey, I'm kind of a badass, guys. Like, I have the ability to do a clinical prescription for a client to have X amount of hours of therapy that is needed, right? Like, that is something that insurance is like, take for value our word. We studied our butt off, so now they know, okay, this person knows their stuff. Now, once we have that knowledge, then that's when we really have to know our limits. And that's really the takeaway in being part of a person that has high integrity is, yes, I'm going to give you my all, and I'm going to try to better you. I'm going to try to like improve the environment that I'm in, but I'm also going to know when I cannot help you. A lot of the times you make verbal promises, and I was so guilty of doing this. I was like, yeah, I'll email you. I never emailed anybody back because I never remembered to write it down. And then the moment I walked out of the room, it was gone, right? That, even if I didn't mean to leave them hanging, right, I made a verbal promise and then I didn't follow through on it. So making sure that either you are making referrals or you are creating these resources where you can continue to help, but you are not draining yourself. You really have to go into like that. I'm aware of burnout. It's part of our it's part of our field, and it's something that we really have to be aware of because we want to reduce those high turnover rates, right? We see it all the time, especially in like in-home clinics or in-home therapy centers. Like, man, they train those RBTs like in and out, guys. There's like really low retention rates. At this point, I do like to stop and see if anybody has any questions about like how you can contribute to the field or to the clinic or whatever setting you are in on being more ethical or making more of an honest environment. Anybody?
Well, in my situation, my company is waiting for me to become a BCBA, and I already know, like they already said they have a long waiting list, so they can definitely give me the hours that I want. But I had to tell them, look, slow your roll. I'm gonna start off with one client, get my feet wet, see how I feel, because I don't want to, like you said, burn myself out or give all if I am not able to give my all. So.
The big thing is making promises you can keep. I think I've noticed that more lately. The more I feel more confident, the more I can easily promise the moon, but I'm shooting for what I can accomplish. So, like today, I had a conference with a parent, prospective client, maybe I'll get it, maybe I won't, but I just told them what I can do and nothing more, nothing less. That way I wasn't, promising anything outside of my scope. But I think that, the integrity part's big, backing up what you can do and being very supportive with your community. Because even like chapter 31 said about, creating more professional development, more opportunities, and teaching a lot of people, it helps with buy-in and really, increases that, knowledge of ABA. Because a lot of people really don't, at least around here, really don't know what it means or how scientific it really is. So.
And I love that, Patrick, because we really find it that, and I usually go more into that in code 5, but, or at least in my experience, and you guys can stop me if I'm completely wrong, I had shitty supervision. Like, I'm sorry, but it was just like ridiculous how people get away with it. Like, they just signed off on it. I didn't know any better. I thought that's how things were. And then when I was actually studying, I was so overwhelmed because I didn't know anything at all. I was starting from zero. And the unfortunate luck that we have in our field is we're learning through non-examples. So I really think that, yes, I have a great non-example of the type of supervisor I don't want to be, right? Or what I didn't get and when they didn't give me, but it's our opportunity to like flip the script. Now we get the option or the ability to say, hey, let me show you. Let's talk about these conversations. I specifically have started an ethics group with we have a bunch of interns, like everybody's getting a supervision in my clinic. So it's really fun. And we have like high school students that are in training. We have bachelor levels, so it's just a big group of people wanting to learn. And this is where you have the ability to create these ethical discussions. Because this is why ethics is hard for the exam, because we don't talk about it. It's the worst subject besides experimental. Everybody hates it. But it's like one of those that we just push off until the end, where opposed to that, we're supposed to be like living it and really trying to make it fall in, right? So one, we do have that, and I'm going to jump back into one because again, I don't want to get preachy, but we go into I now have to be responsible for creating relationships and setting that example. So a lot of the ethics code talks about modeling good behavior. So here I'm going to provide that professional relationship for my RBTs and for my trainees and for all whoever's in my clinical team. But I'm also going to provide this relationship where we are aware. We are working with our clients. We are making adaptations when it's needed. We are not just focusing on this is the way that a relationship is. We are focusing on this is what's working for this client. This is that scientific relationship where I'm continuously checking myself, like, am I communicating with this mom enough? I have a family right now or mom is indigenous from Mexico. So her Spanish is already very limited. So it goes into like, okay, I can communicate to dad at this level, but I have to modify it for mom, right? And I want to create that relationship where I'm not creating multiple relationships or like conflicting relationships where now they're my friends, but I create trust and I create that clinical team. Like that is your main goal, is to have them understand that it's not your job to like get their kid, ta-da, fix them and then give them back. Like, hey, we're a team and I'm going to show you how to work with your kid. I'm going to show you what ABA is, how wonderful it is, how much you can use it, again, while staying within your professional boundaries, but educating. That's like the main takeaway. Okay, at 1.06, this is the one that always comes up. The ethics code straight up says, we do not accept gifts. You're in home as a professional, we should not. However, in like I think it was May 2015 or 16, the ethics code was like revised and there was a newsletter, and it says that if it's due to a cultural adaptation or due to this is accepted in the culture, or I will offend them and hurt our relationship, then it becomes acceptable. Is it encouraged? No. Should you ask them for what you want for Christmas? No. But just, again, being culturally aware, making sure that you are not offending anybody, because we want them to be involved as much as possible. And then last but not least, we go into exploitative relationships. So this is when now I am taking advantage of an individual. So don't ask your supervisees to bring you lunch or Starbucks or wash your car. Make sure that you are being ethical, that you are always putting it on paper. Like if anything is your takeaway for today is data, right? Like if I'm telling you we're going to start bartering, make sure you write it down. If we talk about this is a contract that you and I are starting. Let's talk about it. Let's put it on paper. Let's get those signatures. So exploitative relationships is where, one, you are holding off those 2 years before starting any sort of sexual relationship with your client, student, supervisee, anybody in general after your professional relationship has ended. Now, usually we focus more on the client. However, the code does talk about anybody who you had like power over. And we're talking about like, hey, I can sign off on your hours, or hey, I can give you bad performance record. Yeah? Any questions on that?
No, but Karina, I do have a question in regards to not accepting gifts. Perishable gifts. What are your thoughts on that? Like food, water, cultural things where they think it's, it's wrong to deny something that they're given food-wise. That I know it's a huge conversation with ethics.
Yeah, I I know. And just to back Lindsay up, I also wanted to know if there's a question on the on the mock or on the exam, what do we pick? Do we pick that we should not accept gifts because we should not accept gifts? Like, do you have any insight on that, Karina?
Okay, so to address the first part about like accepting water or gifts and stuff, again, straight up, the code says no, you cannot. Do I do it? Yes, because I live in El Paso, Texas, and it's hot as heck. Okay, like if I'm running outside on the trampoline with your kid, you better give me some water, por favor. Okay, like that is just the normal nature of it. And you're lucky that I'm not leaving with like a sandwich and like a little to go bag. Like that is our culture, right? So for the exam, I will always tell you to go by what Cooper or the ethics code says. So no,
So
unless it specifically states the cultural something that keys you in that this is something due to I'm being nice, I don't want to offend them. But again, I don't want to give you rules because the exam, haha, ethics, right? But you do have to follow with what the book says.
now I'm confused because I just did BDS Ethics Code 1 today, and there was a question about perishable food, and one of the answer choices was to just deny it, and it said that it would destroy the rapport of the family and to accept the perishable gift. And I'm like, what? Now I'm so lost. So
BDS said those?
yeah, behavior development solutions. I was shocked too. I was like, what? But
That
yeah.
doesn't make sense. Can you go back and show me what ethics code it cites?
Yeah.
Because I mean, I know we're talking about 1.1, right? But like,
Yeah, I mean,
give me more information because that doesn't make sense. I can show you the newsletter where it does say like,
yeah, I think it's
water.
6 specifically. I'll screenshot.
Okay, yeah,
So
that's not unethical at all. So, okay. And one thing that I do want to bring up, guys, and I know I do have some multiple test takers here, is if you really think back, because I know we're traumatized because of ethics, right? But if you really think back to those questions about like, what is the best thing to do or what is an ethical consideration? Like, they're not going to discriminate between like, can I get water or can I not? They're going to focus on doing harm. They're going to focus on I'm neglecting somebody or I'm going to look the other way. Like really, because yes, again, every part of the code is important, but we have to focus on those 9 principles which keep that client safe. So when it comes down to those questions, always go with the one that follows the code, right? If there's a cultural adaptation, take that into consideration. Now, if you find a question that says like, the crazy one that Lindsay found today about no, it's gonna hurt you, whatever, you really go into breaking it down with the dimensions and making it a fit in a whole clinical way, not just ethically speaking. You round it off, which okay, between these two answers, is it parsimonious? Is it empirical? Am I getting the data? Am I going into this deterministic cause and effect thinking? Right? So use that mentality to also help you discriminate those answers. Guys, I'm taking forever. I'm still like 30 minutes in and it's code 1, y'all. I'm going to go quicker. I'm sorry. But Body, let's talk about that question because I think it's interesting. But I do tend to just say follow the guide or the code.
Okay, no problem.
Okay. Whew. Code 2. So code 2, guys, talks about now my responsibility to clients. So 1, we work with special populations, whether it be early intervention, kiddos, adolescents, adults, people with an autism diagnosis, or unless you work in another field and whatever, but most of us work with autism, right? They are already a population that is open to being abused, to being taken advantage of. So it is our responsibility to protect them as well. So one, I only accept clients that I know I can help. This is where my preliminary assessment comes in. This is where I'm like real to myself, like, hey, I know I want to learn about SIB and like eye gouging, but am I going to be able to help them, or is it just because I want to learn? Like really and truly keep it for your boundary of competence. Two, you have to make sure that you go back into who am I working for? Who am I trying to help? And focus on that applied dimension. So you are going to have like a hierarchy of individuals when you have like that school or school is involved, parents are there, yada, yada. But the end goal is the kiddo, right? The person who I am working on that direct therapy, that's who I focus on. Now, if I am working with those other parties and I notice that maybe I'm not the best help, or maybe I find out that one of my adult clients has a drug addiction, maybe you need to deal with that first before you come to me, right? Learning to listen to your clients, to your clinical team, and know when ABA is effective and when you need to back up. Because one, ABA is amazing, and again, it changes lives, but sometimes we're not the best help that is needed at that moment. So make sure that you consult or reach out, give referrals, whatever it's needed. In that third party involvement, this is 2.04, we're going to really focus on defining very clearly the relationship roles, what you can expect, what is needed of you, and really outlining your contract, right? So, and this is where, again, the school I know has a lot of rules, and whoever is a teacher, Patrick, could give me more information about the school system, but this is where you really have to be aware of what can I do, who do I need to get this approved by, because that hierarchy of parties can be different. It can be maybe an adult client has a parent who is their legal guardian, and clearly define them. If you start getting into the well, parents want this, but school wants this, you need to go back to the actual contract and say, like, follow the paper trail, right? Who am I here to serve? All right, so rights and prerogatives, I can't say that word, of clients. So this is where we are talking about, hey, the same way that I have a right to like screen my clients and make sure that I can help them, I also have the ability to show them my credentials, and I have to be able to get that written consent, right? Like I have rules to abide by as well. I don't rule and just govern their entire life. So make sure that you are always providing support for your clients' rights, that you are not violating any sort of legal rights. Please don't be that kind of clinician. You must be able to provide your credentials upon request. You must also pass a background check. Just a lot of like little checks and balances. Why? Because the same way that you want to know who you're working with, they want to know who's going to work with their kid or who's going to work with them, right? So be fair. Confidentiality in 2.06. So you will always do everything possible to protect confidentiality, whether this means you are using a lockbox in your trunk, whether you are only taking the document to the house and back and then locking it in the safe, whatever it is, to protect that confidentiality, which you have already discussed at the onset or outset, I should say, of the relationship, right? So if for any reason you need to violate that confidentiality, or you need to revise that relationship or that need, you have to really talk about it. This is one of these things where we continuously revisit, because one, there may be a new client, there may be a whatever. All these environmental factors continuously change the confidentiality, especially now with like social media, you guys. Like, it's so easy to like snap a picture of a kid, post it on like the Facebook page to like promote an event or whatever. But if I am doing that, I am putting my clients at risk. Now somebody out there who may not be super nice knows that they have autism, knows that they can be an easier like prey, right? Just be mindful, make sure that you are doing your part. Now, the same way that you are maintaining confidentiality, you also maintain records. So one, you are responsible, and it's section K-01 in the task list, to create a way to document, store, access, to really just document everything that this client receives during your care. Now, you have to or keep those records for a minimum of 7 years. This is required by the board. Now, if your company, if your state has like hold them for 20 years, that's an extra rule that you have to fall by, because again, we don't break any local, legal, or state laws. So in 7, we talk about maintaining those records, which have to include disclosures. So in 2.08, we go into, I never do anything without written consent. I don't care if mom like recorded herself and sent it to me. I need to show that I have a signature before I actually do anything, because this is making a big difference and a big change. Whoops, sorry guys. In our client's life. So be mindful, make sure that you are not acting before you have that signature. 2.9, this goes into the best treatment that is provided. So one, you have to make sure that everything is evidence-based, that you're focusing on that reinforcement or punishment, focus on reinforcement, but also setting into or bringing into consideration the fact that we are only supposed to give the client what is needed. I am not there to take over their life. I'm not there to bill as much as my company needs me to meet a quota, whatever. I want to help the client. If they need 12 hours a week, cool. If they need 40, okay. But make that based off of your clinical knowledge, not just on what everybody else wants. Also, this is where you have to focus on that. Hey, maybe the fact that he started OT or he now started speech might affect my intervention, right? So one, being aware of those environmental factors and those external treatment parts that we do not control but do affect behavior. So always check yourself. In 210, we're talking about the technical documentation. So it's just that. Make sure it's replicable, make sure it's clear, make sure you're not leaving huge gaps. 211, and we do this all the time, it's data, 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 right? You have to be able to document what is done, what the meeting said, what training was given, what feedback you gave to your RBT, like literally data, 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 guys. You have to document everything. Almost done with 2, and then again, the rest are easy. So 2.12 talks about financial agreements and any contract that you create. Now, usually if you are in a clinic setting or in your home base, you don't deal with contacts too much. However, you do have to be aware of any fees or any contract rules that your client is falling under. So if your company now needs to charge more because Medicaid something crazy, you have to be able to give that information to your client very clearly, being very transparent. If they are able to continue with you, great, let's keep going. If not, make the referral to ensure them continuing their services. 2.13, don't steal, right? Like, make sure that you are not adding those extra 25 minutes a week for random nonsense. Bill what you need. Make sure you're being ethical. If you maybe got approved for 30 hours, but it's too much and you did a parametric analysis and you're like, yo, 20 hours is good, make an amendment to your authorization. Like, don't continue to bill for this money. Make sure that when this client maybe does need more, you're able to meet their needs. Don't take advantage. For 214, referrals and fees. If you get a referral, don't get anything back from it. This is just, hey, this is what my client needs. This is what's going to help them. And that's all I get. Maybe a thank you, right? And then 215, it really focuses on the discontinuation of services. So we never abandon clients. We never just stop showing up. You always want to ensure that you have a transition plan, that there is like an end game in mind. So when you fill out that first contract and you're talking about like, hey, these are the goals that we're going to talk about, you also set a discharge or a termination criteria for your treatment plan. Or at the very least, you say, hey, within 6 months, we will do another evaluation and see what's up. Right? Because then at that point, you're able to continue to evaluate, am I really still needed? Has this kid met their goals? Are they successful? Or what do I need to change? All right, code 3, and I'm going to try to speed it up a little bit because like I said, those are like the beefier ones. But in code 3, guys, we are now talking about the assessment of behavior. So once I set it up, my client is good. I went through like that preliminary assessment. I got the signature. They signed the treatment plan. Now I'm going to go into this behavior analytic assessment. This is where I'm going to create that treatment plan or that FBA where I determine the function of each one of their behaviors, where I try to do as much work as I can to avoid that FA. I collect that data, I graph that data, I make data-based recommendations to make sure that it's behavioral, that's analytic. These are a lot of the dimensions here, right? Now, before I go into, because I get this question a lot in section G about medical consultation. Right? So yes, the first thing you're going to do if you believe that there is a medical condition is get a doctor referral. But in order for me to be able to give a referral, I have to be assessing and I have to be able to see it. If somebody tells me, this kid pokes his butt because he can't go to the bathroom, he's like really stuffed up, right? I'm not just going to be like, referral, and just send everybody. I'm going to assess. So first you have to see what data is there. You have to observe. And before you do any intervention, that's where the most parsimonious answer is get a medical consultation. Okay. So once you do medical consultations, again, consent. You have to get that signature from mom, from dad, from whoever is a caregiver. You also get a signature from your RBT. So this is where you're saying like, okay, mom, these are the goals. Do you understand what is expected of me? Do you understand what is expected of you? And you just double check that everybody in that clinical team knows what needs to be done. Then you tell them, now that I have gotten your consent for this assessment, this is what I'm going to do with this information. And you go into 3.4 where I explain to you the assessment results. So I don't want to just go to a mom and be like, oh, you're right, he does cry when I tell him to clean. Like, yeah, obviously I freaking knew that, right? But like explain it to them, say, now that we know that this is the function, what we're going to do, and like really walk them through it. A lot of people know ABA helps, but they don't know what ABA is. So making sure that they understand the process, make sure that they understand of that thing called extinction burst, right? They are already in a situation where they need help, and then they come into treatment plan, and guess what? Behavior gets worse. Whoa, don't let them get caught off guard. Let them know, walk them through. So once you explain the results, you also want to make sure that you have consent to provide records to other people or get records from others. Especially like, for instance, I work in a nonprofit, so everything's like interdepartmental, whatever. So we can just like send the files over really quick, but we have to make sure that we have that client consent before I share with speech or OT or the feeding clinic. So again, signature or nothing happens. All right, code 4. Code 4 talks about the actual treatment. So now I walked through code 3 with the assessment, right? And I found out the functions of every behavior. I targeted what skills I know this kid needs and they can be really functional and help them be independent. Now I'm gonna sit down, and this is section J, and write conceptually systematic treatment plans. And I'm gonna focus on reinforcement and evidence-based whatever. If it's a weighted vest, it does not have evidence-based. Social stories do not have weight or evidence-based. Fun fact, I will tell you this super quick. So there's actually studies going on right now, and they just presented, where social stories are a good social or cultural adaptation for Spanish speaking clients. So there's evidence-based for social stories in Spanish, but not English. Weird, I don't know, but that's out there, y'all. Okay. So once you sit down and you're like, okay, these are my interventions, this is where you go back into 4.2 and you talk about, okay, mom, I'm going to go into, these are the programs that we have picked together. In that assessment, you told me what was important, what you wanted them to work on, what you really value and find near and dear to your heart, right? This involvement in the planning is how we utilize that buy-in. This is how I get them involved and keep them motivated, because you thought about this. You are the one that wanted to work on this skill. So now they're more involved, which goes into 4.3 or 4.03. Do not copy and paste treatment plans. It is my biggest pet peeve when I see an intern that turns in a he when it's a female client, and it's he must whatever. Ooh, because I know you just copied and pasted from another client's treatment plan. And just because I have 2 6-year-olds who are working on washing hands doesn't mean that they need the same amount of prompts or the same type of prompts for each step, right? So make sure it's individualized, make sure it's that applied. Again, signature before. So you got a signature to start treatment. You got a signature to assess the behavior and what you were going to do with that assessment. Now, again, signature to do and finalize that treatment plan. This is where you go into 4.5, describing the behavior change programs. So what is needed of me, of you, of the RBT, setting expectations, tying it back to that buy-in. 4.6 or 4.06, now we're going to talk about any barriers that I need to deal with now. So mom, I noticed that you're always late. Do you need me to push back session 30 minutes, right? Like, what is going to prevent this from being like the most effective? Which goes right into, wait, did I go into 4.6? Oh, just kidding. So for 4.6, guys, my bad. 4.6, we're talking about reaching out to others and kind of talking about what is needed to be successful. And then in 4.7, that's where we're talking about like, hey, we already planned it out and these are still barriers. So this is where we address, this is not working. Do I need to change something? Is there a staffing issue? Yada, yada. So first, antecedent, right? Trying to get that group effort. Then I go into addressing barriers. 4.8. So now we're going into punishment. So punishment is not bad. Stop shying away from it. The only thing that you need to do is show me the data where you use reinforcement and it didn't work. If you can cover your butt and you can show me that punishment is needed, then it is totally doable. Punishment is very effective. It's very well, it needs to obviously increase in supervision and yada, yada. But when done correctly and ethically, it's very helpful for our clients. So don't shy away from it. It's also there as an option. Within punishment, real quick, you do have to include the increase of supervision, of oversight, of training. You have to make sure you include when it will be ended. You have to choose the magnitude that you will be using, which is effective, not the highest at all points, right? What is effective? And 4.9, least restrictive, right? Don't pull out your kid from school to work on shoe tying. Like, doesn't make sense. So make sure your prompts are appropriate. Make sure that you are not prohibiting from their ability to contact reinforcers. You are providing choices. Hey, do you want to do this or this? Specifically with older clients, obviously include their preferences and their choices and reinforcement, because we're focusing on that autonomy. 4.10, don't give them sugar all the time. Be mindful of that. And then also focus on, like, maybe I'm not giving you sugar, but maybe your reinforcer is running outside and it's 104 degrees out, right? That can be harmful as well, so be mindful. Discontinuing behavior change programs. So the same way that we talked about having a treatment end goal in the assessment portion, we have to go back and say, hey, when they meet all these goals, or where they get to level 3 on VBMAT, whatever, make it super specific, but we will discontinue, right? Or we will check in 6 months. So keep yourself accountable. Don't just keep them in your client list forever. Okay, time out real quick. We have like 10 minutes left. Or do you guys usually stop right at 7? You're muted.
Not really. We can continue, I guess.
Okay, I won't go too far over. You were muted the whole time, Patrick. But I do want to keep up the momentum. Okay, I get gushy about code 5, y'all, so keep me on track. So code 5 is our duty as supervisors. So again, we got bad supervision, or some of us got bad supervision, right? It is now our job to ensure that the next generation of BCBAs has a better opportunity, or has it easier. So the changes that are coming up in 2022 are great, and they're going to include more of a clinical component, or like a competency, because we don't really have one for BCBAs opposed to RBTs. So 5.1, make sure that you are only teaching the RBTs that you know you can teach, that you are training them in what you are trained in, right? So don't be like, yeah, I can give supervision to like 30 people that work for adults when I work in ECI. Like, that's not appropriate. Now, that being said, you also have to keep in mind the volume of your supervision. For instance, for myself, I passed in February. I now started my first set of trainees, but I have a mentor that I'm doing it with. So technically, she is the one overseeing the treatment, but she's, hey, no, go away. She's training me on how to train them to be good BCBAs. Right? So that is something that I thought I needed in order to have a good supervisory competence, because I knew everything that I didn't get, right? And then I got really lucky, and I worked with this amazing BCBA for the last like 7 months, and I learned a lot, but I didn't know the proper way to learn, right? Like, how do you start someone to have a good foundation from the beginning of their coursework? Like, that's unheard of. Right? There's not like a specific BCBA training plan. So that's what we work in. So 1, we work within our competence. 2, we work within our volume. So they have to be able to meet the observations. You have to be able to give them their individual supervision. If they have questions, you keep, again, that integrity part of, I know that I can only help 2 individuals, and that is okay. We want to help more, and we want to give more, and our company may pressure us to do more, but know your limits or you will burn out. And it stinks that you work so hard to get the certification, and then 3 months in, you're burnt out, right? So be mindful. All right, so supervisory delegation. Just because your supervisory or trainees or whatever are really enthusiastic and ready to rock doesn't mean they should by themselves. So make sure that you are able to see them first perform the task competently, safely, and ethically before you send them out there. So I hate it when I see people say, here, go do an interview. And I'm like, okay, but have they observed one? Have they like seen a report? Do they know what questions they're going to ask? Right? I do not like feeling like I don't know what I'm doing. So I want to make sure that we role play and we use those behavior skills trainings, right? Where they know what they're doing so they do a good job and we don't look like we're all lost. Okay, so for 5.4, these are the biggest changes in the third edition of the ethics book, which is now it is our responsibility that if you choose to create a training program or accept supervisees, then you have to create a training program. You have to make sure that they cover every single thing on that task list. So they are effective clinicians and they know how to apply it. So you're literally like what's the word? You're like accepting to become a mentor. It's not so much as a here I can sign off, right? Because somebody signed off on your hours and it wasn't helpful at all. So you have to be able to create that communication. So this is why we go into that ethical communication in the workplace, right? I need to tell you, hey, these are the expectations I had. We already went over them. You're not meeting them. What are the barriers? And really focusing on creating a team and not going, like, for instance, in other professions, I don't know, lawyers, or I can't think of any other profession, barbers, I don't know. They have different ways that they interact with themselves, right? Some of them are competitive, some of them are different. We are not competitive. We are like team centered. We want the more brains put together and working and communicating because that's going to help our client. So set expectations, make sure that everybody knows what they're doing and they know how to communicate when it's too much. In 5.6, you also have to be able to provide good feedback. So know how they like their feedback, know what is most effective. I have a supervisee that if I tell them anything in person, they freeze. We're working on it, they've gotten better, but if they freeze, then I lost the entire rest of my training session, right? However, I have another trainee where I can jump in and be like, that was great, here, let's try this, and we can work together, and they feel a lot more confident. So that's our end goal, where we are working together with our client instead of just me telling them what to do. So through my feedback, I am growing my RBTs and I am making sure that they know when to tell me. Also, this is my limit. This is where I can no longer help you, right? Really sucks because as a culture, we are told to just do what your boss says. You will meet whatever. But again, burnout is real. Be kind. Make sure that you remember when you had all these studying hours and you had all these assignments for school and you were crying during your nap time, right? That it sucks and that it's hard. So be mindful, be a human. Then evaluate key effects. Just because you wrote out this great training plan and you made like a good feedback system doesn't mean it's working. So check in, make sure you're getting evaluations done from your RPTs or your supervisees to keep you in check, keep you growing, keep you being better. All right, 6 and 7 are so easy. So 6, now we're going back into the profession, right? So I talked about what was needed of me for clients, for behavior, for assessment, for the treatment plan, for supervision. Now we're talking about my duty as a behavior analyst, right? So 1, be ethical, right? Uphold the principles. Make sure that you are going into socially significant behavior and helping others and focusing on behavior and positive reinforcement and staying connected, right? Like it's just that. Continue to grow, continue to be good. And then 2, disseminate. This is where a lot of people are lacking. A lot of people, when we study, we forget to talk about the concepts, right? We can answer 30 billion questions, but if you can't talk about it, it's really going to prohibit your reach in the world. So disseminate ABA, whether it be creating a group chat for your RBTs where you can post questions, where you create an ethics group, whatever it is, just make it available to others. Is a growing field that needs to be more widely known. All right, then we go into code 7, which is now my responsibility to others in the field. So again, by disseminating, I'm creating an ethical culture. So include, like for instance, Patrick, you have an opportunity to help somebody open up a clinic. Make sure their mission statement goes along with their ethics code, right? Like make sure that you're taking all these responsibilities and all these laws or rules that we abide by and including it in our intervention, in our clinics, in our everyday place, because the more we talk about it, the more ethical everybody is, the easier it is for us to like grow and be open to change. Now, if there is a violation, now the ethics book has a cool like little chart that you go by and it's like, what level of violation is this? And you go through all of that, but you have to keep things in mind. Like there's 4 things that you have to really, really focus on, right? If somebody is going to get hurt, right? Like if this client is gonna get beat up tonight, call CPS, call the authorities, call somebody that can stop them. Now, the next question that I get is, do I have to tell my supervisor? No. If your company has another law or rule that you abide by, cool. But as a mandated reporter, which every single one of us is, you have to speak up. If you go to your supervisor and they decide not to go along with it, and then 3 months later somebody else reports it, guess what? You didn't speak up, so now you're in trouble. Right? So yes, keep all these variables into consideration, communicate with your team, but if somebody's going to be harmed, you stop it. You cannot allow it to happen. If there is a legal violation, right? Like you caught a supervisor smoking weed outside the client's home, I don't know. Call the police, go to somebody who is going to be able to help. If you call the board and they're like, hey, so-and-so was smoking weed, what are they going to do? It's not going to look good, right? But you have to go to who can actually help. Now, if this is something that is not creating an immediate risk of harm, you have to talk to the person, right? The first thing is address it with them. Why? They may not know they're doing it. We want to give them like the innocent until proven guilty thing, right? Talk to them, try to work it out, and document. If you already talked to them, they're not changing, you have the documentation, move forward. You have to now police it. This ethics code really works because of code 7. It helps us self-police and make sure that we are all holding our profession to these high ethical standards. Okay, now we go into public statements. So 1, don't lie about ABA can cure autism. If you are like marketing, if you are doing anything to promote your services, do not create deceptive statements like ABA, I don't know, change my kid overnight, right? Like, yes, we wish it could, but it's not like that. That is not real. If you have other therapies or any other credentials, when you are exercising under the behavior analytic license, you only include information about behavior analytics credentials or certifications or anything to that effect. So everything else is great. Congratulations. However, it is not important within the field of ABA. That going along is Intellectual property, right? So everything is copyrighted. So for instance, the logo on the board, that's copyrighted, don't use it. The logo on the ethics book, that's copyrighted, don't use it, right? Unless you have, again, written consent, comes back everywhere. So give credit in all your presentations. You'll see at the end that there's always that APA format, whatever, because you have to think about, if I give out this presentation or this program or whatever, and somebody else wants to learn more about it, they have Cooper, now they have the ethics book, now they have all these resources. So not only is it to look nice at the end of the presentation, one, we want to give credit where credit is due, like, hey, I'm not a genius, this comes from this book, go read about it in this genius book. But it also talks about giving the opportunity to grow. So just cite people, be nice. It's really easy to cite. You can go to the library and click cite. No. Okay, so statement by others. Another question I see a lot. Hey, can I ask a current client for a letter of recommendation? No. If it is a current client and you ask for a letter of recommendation or a statement for an advertisement or anything, it can create a exploitative relationship, right? It can put me in a situation where I need to kiss butt for the BCBA, or they'll stop helping my kid. So not from current clients. However, if from previous clients, you want to include a nice little advertisement or a little testimony or whatever, you can do so, but you have to state when it is requested or when they just loved you so much that they gave you a free like referral or whatever. Okay, media presentation. So as we go in and disseminate from code 6, now we have to make sure that we are disseminating within HIPAA, right? So don't include photos of clients, whether it be on presentations, on websites, on anything. And make sure that you are getting signatures for any information that is given. Like for instance, if you are, I don't know, doing a presentation on NET for Manding or whatever it is, right? And you're going to use data from one of your clients, make sure that you get written consent to display data. And on top of that, you are still, what is it when you don't include it? You are erasing, I don't know, not including the names, anything identifiable. So you are just keeping everybody extra safe. Even if they're like, please, oh my God, my kid, include his name. Don't do it, okay? So again, going back to testimonials, and this is statements by others. So in testimonials, it can go into that conflict of interest. And when we go into 8.3, it's more for like paid advertising as well. So like, don't go, I don't know, pay your new RBT to make a good statement online about this new clinic, right? So just be mindful, don't lie, give credit to people, identify where the information is coming from, identify if it is solicited or unsolicited testimonials or information, and don't do in-person solicitation. That's déclassé. Any Office fans, that's cool. But so don't show up at offices trying to like hunt down a mom to get her into the ABA clinic, right? You can market, there's all these other resources that you can do, but never hunt down clinics or people. Almost done, guys, I promise. All right, code 9. So code 9 really talks about research. So code 9.1 talks about make sure that you are meeting all the laws and regulations, that you're going into that internal review board and seeing what is needed, what do you have to document, whoop, my bad. What do you need to document and how you need to document to see if it applies to anybody that is within your research, right? So the characteristics of somebody that's doing responsible research is you have to get, again, approval from the review board before you do anything. So this review board, again, is made by the Blue Ribbon Committee to try to keep everything tip-top in shape. So side note, in the review board, you would be falling into that branch of ABA. That's that conceptual systematic, right? Or like the conceptual, what is it? Conceptual, you guys know which one.
Systematic.
Yes, systematic.
That's it. Good job, guys. Because we're checking into the ethical, right? And any issues that may arise. So this review board kind of checks and balances. You also have to make revisions, make sure they know exactly what you're doing. Don't use IOA that's going to be like misleading. Give the one that's going to give the true data, not just to pat yourself on the back, but you want to include good research to help others. Informed consent. So tell your participants what they're doing, but you're not going to tell them the whole purpose of what I'm researching and what effect on the behavior, right? You need to just tell them about the nature of the research, what they will be asked to do, the fact that they can withdraw from the research at any point, that they can decline to participate, that they will not be like penalized or anything will happen if they say, I'm good, I don't want to do it anymore. Right? One, because I want you to know what the participant is getting into, but I don't want to screw up my results, right? So be mindful of, you need to know what is expected of you, but not what my giant brain is thinking about, right? Then we go into 9.4. So when we're talking about confidential information, okay, we already talked about it in 8, right? Where even if I get permission, I'm not going to give information or identifiable information where it's not needed. So I'm going to disguise any information. I can call them like participant 5 or subject 13 or whatever you're talking about. Don't tell me little Johnny from Alabama who wears green shorts. Right? Like, I don't want little Johnny to be found. Be mindful. The debrief. So at the end of your research, you now have to go back and talk to your participant and tell them like, hey, remember when I gave you like this amount of information? This is the whole thing. This is what I was the true purpose of my research. We did not tell you because we don't want the response bias, but these are the results. And you tell them, right? Like, this is what I found. The same way that you tell a parent, this is what I found in the assessment, you share the knowledge. Then you go into grants and reviews. So if you are doing research, it's so hard, you guys, but it's fun. You have to go into what review panels do I have to go through? How many journal reviews do I have to provide? How many peer reviews do I have to go through, right? So meet those like qualifications. Make sure that you are also giving people credit for the reviews. If they are doing any editing, any replications, any proposals, anything, people need to be acknowledged. We don't steal. Always tell them who worked for you, who helped you out. Plagiarism. So fully cite other works. Don't give like parts of citations. Be able to cite all of it. 9.9, acknowledge contributions. So even if somebody helped you for like 2 days to like set up the experiment, acknowledge them. They are still part of where you are, environmental factors, yada, yada, be nice. Almost done, I promise. Accuracy of data. So you will not withhold the data. You will include the data that is a good and true, honest representation of your intervention. You will correct any issues or mistakes with the data if you find any. Do not include or withhold any data to make it look better. Like if you have any outliers or something, everything has to be included because by sharing data, even if it didn't work, like that's more evidence-based, and like you can include into limitations or for further research and make it better, right? Educate others and tell them like, hey, I tried, this went totally wrong, but I think this is what can be done to avoid this. All right, last and not least, this is to the board. I feel like this one, they just needed a pat in the back. Okay, so for the board, don't lie to them. Make sure they know where you work, where you live, not really, but update your information. Make sure that when you send in those last minute certifications or like verification forms, you're not lying, that your hours are correct. Make sure you communicate in a timely fashion. So everything has to be done within 30 days, right? This is if you change your address, if you have some sort of mental condition. Side note, there's no like true operational definition of what that could mean as far as like a mental condition that impairs your ability to help others. I mean, if I don't know, if I need to check myself into a rehab, then I would see where that would impair me. But like, does depression, does, you know, something else? But just saying, hit up the board for that. So if you have a fine, and this is where it's important, over the amount of $750 and it is under your name, you must report it. If the client is in the car and you got a $50 fine, you have to report it. Like if client is there, whole nother thing. However, if you are speeding to work before work, right, and you hit something and it's a $200 fine, they don't care. The magic number is $750. Why? I don't know, but they felt like that was a good number. Okay, 10.3. So this goes back to the logo, right? Intellectual property, don't share, don't disclose any information of testing materials, don't cheat. If you see somebody cheating, call them out. Be like, yo, I studied hard. They need to too. Make sure that you report any loopholes, any answer sheet, whatever. Don't encourage cheaters. 10.5, we're going into making sure that you are getting those coursework and supervision documents signed accordingly. If by some reason you are found that you retroactively signed, they can like fine you, or they can like sanction you, where they like suspend your license for a certain amount of time. So don't lie, right? Just if you forgot, then I'm sorry, you cannot count those hours, try again.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Shruti had a question about life-changing events. Would that be your 30-day window too for life-changing events, like a child or death of the family, stuff like that?
Yes. And like specifically if like, let's say, God forbid, anybody gets into an accident where you cannot provide services, then you do have to make that 30-day notice. And you also provide like some, don't hold me to it because I haven't personally done it. However, when you do make that notice, they will ask you to like document like what type of I don't know what they call it. Like it's like an exemption, because they can almost like put your certification on hold if needed. Like if you say, hey, like, I don't know, I lost 2 of my legs, or I don't know how many legs you would have, but I lost both legs. I don't know when I'm going to be back in the field. They can like almost freeze your certification so you don't lose it. You don't get into that. So anything just within 30 days. If you have a felony, then you can't be a BCBA for 3 years, but then you can like reapply in fair game. 10.6, you have to be familiar with this code. Now, this includes this code and the RBT code, because a lot of the times you forget that they have an RBT code too, right? So make sure that you are disseminating, you are creating conversations, you are educating others of just the ethics code and how we should be working. Just because we are all not doing it is not a good excuse. And 10.7, and I see this all the time, if I see future BCBA or something like that, that is unethical. Okay, there is no BCBA trainee, there is no BCBA student, there's no, it is just, you are a BCBA, yes or no. Okay, so if you see somebody out there, send them code 107. Let them know that they cannot like pre-advertise as a BCBA. You literally have to earn those letters. And now I do have questions, but it's been too long. So, do you guys want me to just send you the presentation? Oops, sorry. And then we can go over questions, or what are your thoughts, people?
I can stay if someone can stay. I mean, Karina, can you stay?
I can maybe do a little bit more, like maybe a couple questions, 2-3 questions.
That'll be
I
awesome.
can stick around. It's all right. Whatever y'all
Yeah.
want to do.
Okay, because I'm hungry, so let's do like 2 questions. I did a total of 9 though. So even if we don't get to them, go back and reread them, okay?
Sure, thank you.
All right.
Thanks.
Question 1. Ah, no, I'm the worst. Okay, ignore question 1, everybody. No? Go to the next one.
What are you saying? I don't understand.
It's because I already gave the answer. Nobody saw?
Yeah, she already gave the answer. When you said, "Oh my God," I looked, and that's when I saw it.
Yeah, my bad. Okay, I won't touch it. I'm sorry. Ignore 1. My bad. I'm the worst. It was D. Okay, I'm not touching it.
I'm sorry.
15 seconds. Send your answers in the chat. I just remembered I can't see the chat, so Patrick, you gotta check. Okay, send your answers now. I'm about to show you the answer for this one is B. How are the answers looking?
It looks like everyone got it right. Everyone was guessing B.
Nice. All right, so again, I'm not gonna touch it. Just 15 seconds.
We have pretty much the same answer going on right now. No
All
change.
right. Okay,
That's where we all went. We all went to A.
good.
That's because we're smart. We're smart, Patrick.
Smarty pants.
What's all smart? Vari. She's super smart.
Oh, please.
It's that doctor brain.
Oh, God.
Sorry, you gotta be different. This resembles my third grade report card.
It's because I have a question on this.
Okay, what is it? Or what's
Nothing.
the answer? What are they split in?
I'm the only one who said B. Everybody else is saying D.
Okay. So why? What's your question?
Oh, I was thinking it says that she recommends the client to be brought to the clinic during the school day to receive more intensive hand washing training. To me, intensive is more like you have not, it doesn't say nowhere that they've exhausted the reinforcement options. So intensive to me sounds like it's punishment. No? I
And I
don't know.
think intensive speaks to more of the amount of intervention that you're getting,
Okay,
opposed to like think of the more focused ABA where it's like 10 hours a week, opposed to a comprehensive where it's like 30 plus.
perfect. So then it's D. Okay.
Yep. So now who can tell me what should you do if your client who's 6 years old is having all these behaviors for your task analysis?
Would you modify?
Yep. What would you start modifying?
Seeing where the deficit is, perhaps, and then work on what will be reinforcing the client to continue.
Exactly. That first thing you want to look for is where's my right? Like maybe they were promising little whoever the 6-year-old is, Rachel, no, whoever. They're saying like, hey, after you wash your hands, you can get a sticker, but she doesn't care about stickers anymore. Or she's fed up with the unicorn stickers that you're giving her, right? So go into reinforcement first, try to use that pre-mac. First we wash our hands, then we get to whatever we need to do after and see if that is enough to change it. And then if not, then we would go into, okay, what's the breakdown? Do I have to have more support? Do I need whatever it is? But you start with reinforcement, right? Because if I control reinforcement, I control behavior. What was that?
You don't want to continuously change the environment either, just because she couldn't get one thing done for whatever reason.
Exactly.
Even a local
Why? Because
school-
you want it to be parsimonious, right? I don't want to be intrusive. I want to be super effective, low, easy interventions. All right. How about we do one more and then we call it?
Probably Intersection. Interception's a good movie. And you got typo in their first sentence.
Stop.
Got a lot of the same answers going on.
See?
Looks like C. I mean, you would need to call a lawyer. I mean, it's not like it's an impossible thing, but you would need that if you do your other 3 steps. They're better, proactive choices.
Exactly. Exactamente. All right, guys. That was me. I'm sorry.